Hello and welcome to Penguin Projects. In today's video I want to make a dice tower. Now I've made dice towers in the past, like this one here. This is just paper mache and stuff. But the purposes of this dice tower I want to make is to be used in the same way as the box of doom on Dimension 20. Because the box of doom I feel like adds a lot to the show. Because it can make rolls more impactful. Like rolls are a very important thing in the game of D&D, of course. They kind of determine what happens, but in some moments where it's like, fate hangs in the balance, and then tension at the table is rising, and then to say, okay, this is a box of doom roll. I think just seeing all the players' reactions, and it's really cool. Now I do a similar thing which is roll in front of the screen, So they would come up and they'd roll in the dice tray in front of everyone. But I want just like an object to kind of imbue that in, that when I take this out, things are getting more serious. So that's the plan for today. Now I have some fun ideas in mind, so why don't we jump over to the workbench and get started. So my main idea is to use this Halloween skull I picked up as the main tower itself. So I'm going to cut out the eye, and then the dice will go through the skull and land in its mouth. Just using this 3mm MDF as the base, and then just gluing a bit of styrofoam on, because I've recently got myself a hot wire cutter, so we'll be able to shape that later. So just applying the glue and then weighing it down and letting that dry. So while that dries, get my drill out and start drilling out that eye. And then just widening it with my knife. Then a quick sand on the edges, and then I realised I made it too small, so I have to widen it more. That fits now, so that's looking good. So I'm just going to pop off the jaw, and then I'm going to make an opening for the dice to come through. So the plastic actually ended up being too thick for me to cut. I had the great idea of using my Forstner bit, but because of the angle of the front of the skull, it just went off to the side. So I've cut my hand a little bit, so blood warning. We won't worry about that as I have plasters. Jesus, plasters. Perfect. Now that we have a hole to go off, I can just widen that with my knife now, kind of chipping away at the plastic until I have a nice arc opening for the dice to come through. So for the ramp itself, I'm just going to use cardboard, just basically like this, and then you can drop it in and it just rolls out. So I need the skull to sit flat, so I'm just going to take off the back of it. And I'll hold on to that piece as well, because it can probably get used as a rock or something in another project. So I'm just using a piece of cardboard to make that ramp, so it sits under the eye and then out the mouth. And then I'm just gluing that down with super glue and baking soda. The super glue and baking soda mix kind of creates like a plastic weld almost. It's really good. And then I'm just reinforcing the back of it with hot glue. There you go, you can see that's working now. And then I'm just adding extra support on the back of these triangles that I'm hot gluing in, and then I'll cap off the back. Now back to our base. So here's that hot wire cutter. So just going to use that to follow the shape around, and then I'll come back and add hills and stuff to it. Also just making riser for the mouthpiece so it's easier to take the dice out. Now that I have the outline of my skull, I can start chipping away and making it a bit more interesting shape, and then I'm just carving out the spot for the skull to sit, just so it sits a bit lower. Then just using PVA and toothpicks, I'm locking that riser for the mouth, just so it doesn't move while it's drying. I like to use my hands to spread glue if you haven't noticed. I think it's just the easiest way to do it, and no glue spreader will beat your hands. It's just so much better, so much easier. I'm just bundling up the LED lights into stems that are going to be our mushrooms. I want to make this a mushroom affected kind of skull. It's been left on the forest floor for years, and because it's fantasy they light up. Then I'm just coating the strands I made in hot glue, and then I used a little glass bottle to make those caps, but I lost the footage for that. But it's basically just hot glue as well. Then I brought it out for a quick prime, just kind of loosely going with the rough highlights with the white, but mostly just priming it black. Then painting the base in a dark brown colour, just covering the whole thing because we're going to flock this later. And then painting the nose holes and the teeth in that brown as well. Now the brown tone I mixed up is supposed to be lighter, so there's not actually a big colour difference once you see it all painted together, but I thought it was worth doing at the time. You can see there's not much value difference between the nose and the teeth and the rest of it. Now just dry brushing, like a very heavy dry brush with this kind of yellow ochre colour as our first tone. Then mixing in a lot of white, making it a lot lighter, and then coming back in with a sponge. I wanted to try adding like a bit of texture just to give it that kind of bone look. I then mixed up some of the darker with the lighter one and just kind of smeared it together just to create a shadow. This is flocking I actually made following Miscast's flocking video that he put out recently. Recommend you check it out because he uses sawdust and I have plenty of that in work, so I was able to just take a box home and make up the sawdust flocking. I'll actually leave a link to that video because it's a very cheap and cool way to make your own flocking. Then once we're back inside, I'm just using hot glue again and some moss. Now I'm very quick with how I do things, so in the end result you actually see a bit of the hot glue poking out. Well, you see a good bit of the hot glue, to be fair, but I don't mind too much, so I just left it as is. But you could definitely spend more time if you're doing this yourself, just to hide that hot glue better. Don't be impatient like me. Now I'm just trying the speed paints from Army Painter on the mushrooms to colour them, because they're slightly translucent, so it means the light still comes through. Yeah, you can see how that looks now. I think it turned out pretty cool. Now I'm just doing one more coat of highlights, focusing mainly on the face just to draw attention there. After highlight, then I'm just going in with another speed paint, a yellow one, just to grime up those teeth, make them a bit dirtier. And then just painting around the rim in a brown, and then we can go into the reveal. I'm really happy with how it came out, and I can't wait to use it in my games. I'd love for you to leave a comment and let me know what you think. And thanks so much for watching.